Hello. Excellent. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. I had the lunch, and it was really good, so I don't know why there is low energy. Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Gedenji Gitahi. I am the Group CEO for Amref Health Africa, but I also sit on the board of the Lancet Countdown for Climate Change and Health, and also on the board of CEPI, which is the one for pandemic preparedness. And today we have a very exciting closing plenary, which is going to be co-chaired between myself and Niraj. And Niraj is right here. I'll call him up after we've had the fantastic keynote that we are expecting here. So I will introduce Niraj at the end of the first keynote. The conversation today is actually on climate change and emerging infectious diseases. You can just say climate change and infectious diseases, both re-emerging, emerging, both of them. And the key issue here is, what is the role of climate change in the impact on public health? And what does that mean to medical countermeasures, policy, health systems, and what kind of research should inform our policies around that area? I will tell you, discussing just now with Professor Tulio, that I have been involved, and he's been involved a lot on the COP, the Conference of Parties on Climate. But every time we go to present health as a critical area, as actually the face of the climate change, the adaptation side in terms of the impact of climate change, the global warming on health and public health, they always say there's no data. We know these things, but where is the data? So when we are pushing for the global goal on adaptation to include health, for financing to include health, we are told it's a dark area. Most of the data is on mitigation. So today we have a fantastic opportunity to listen to Professor Tulio, who is going to talk to us about this key area in his keynote. And of course, he is well known to us. Many of us who are in the area of COVID remember the controversy that arose after his groundbreaking research on the Omicron, the virus of COVID-19, and what happened after that. What I love about Professor Tulio is, of course, that other than his groundbreaking research and, of course, his global recognition by Time 100, he actually focuses a lot of his time on advocating for equitable health access in Global South. So he is able to link his research to equitable access, and we'll see how that goes. But I also found out by scanning his profile that he's a man who loves cricket, he loves to cycle, he loves soccer, and recently I discovered he also loves counting baboons when he's cycling. And I want him to come up and tell us, do baboons have anything to do with climate-amplified infectious diseases or not? Professor Tulio, this is your time. Please, welcome for a keynote. A big hand for Professor Tulio. Welcome, Prof.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, just one technical question. I may need the thing to change the slides, unless someone want to change for me. Yeah. But as you start to set up, yeah, just to say thank you very much for this very kind introduction. Yeah. And also thank you very much for the award and recognition this morning. Was really excited, and I feel very honored to be here among all of you. Yeah. So, yeah, I probably can just fill the time talking until they put the keynote presentation and give me the slide changer. Yeah. But what I'm gonna try to talk to you, so the main essence of my presentation, it's how do you move from one crisis to the other? But how you move from one crisis, yeah, in a way that you bring the facilities, the knowledge, and the expertise that was used in one to respond to the other one, yeah? So that's gonna be the whole essence of my talk. And then what we're going to highlight is that a lot of this work that I'm being presented, yeah, is done not only by our group, but with many, many young scientists, yeah, many fellows that are really close where the outbreaks happen, and they are the ones that are characterizing that in real time, yeah. So maybe until they give me the change, if you can change the slide, please, for me in the back, yeah. So during the COVID pandemic, yeah, we set up a very efficient system in South Africa. We create a national program. We were the second country to create a national program. We link 8, 9 genomics facility, always with a big lab of the government in green, yeah, and fully funded by our own government, yeah. So if you click again, yeah, so once we discovered the first variant, the beta, thank you so much, very kind, yeah, our government decided to invest further, yeah, both the MRC and the Department of Science and Innovation, and we create a big program with over 500 scientists, direct contact of the presidents that went from genomics, virology, immunology, clinical trials, and that's what allowed us this strong communication to detect the Omicron. Once that finished, we decided to bid for the WHO mRNA program, just to highlight that the basic science that was developed to start producing vaccines in the country. And we won that bid to create the first global training center for mRNA and production. And I'm gonna bring some information there later, yeah. Ourselves, CERI at Stellenbosch University, we also did some very large investments, yeah. We create a state-of-the-art biomedical research facilities that host up to 1,000 scientists, and many of them are here presenting. Just to get an idea, the top floor, it has 26 BSL-3 labs, yeah? And in the ground floor and the underfloor, we have the biggest biorepository in Africa, in a way that you can really start producing this data and answer some key questions in real time. But it was not enough to have a biomedical facility. We also had to invest a lot in data science, because you need that data science to analyze that. So we also founded what we call the first school for data science and computational thinking. Yeah, we incorporated a center, a very famous center, the South Africa Center for Epidemiological Modeling Analysis, and we started a big program with the African Mathematical Institute for Mathematical Science and Google to try to bring this new technology, yeah. But what we thought that was our moral compass is not to keep that only to South Africa, but to share that with the rest of the continent, yeah. And together with under the leadership of the Africa CDC and the WHO Afro, was set up the Pathogen Genomic Initiative, which we were one of the key specialized laboratories with a mandate to support every member states. And that's what we did wholeheartedly, sequence for dozens, but training almost all. And that was an exciting time in science. That was a time that we were working together and really across the continent, yeah. So we helped to coordinate the 2 continental papers, yeah. And we are so proud that the first one, yeah, both of them published in Science, had 148 African scientists leading the whole program. The second one, over 300, just creating that network to act. And then, in addition to that, we engage with multiple funders, yeah, to create a very large capacity building development, a fellowship program that have received now 702 fellows from 48 African countries to do short, middle, or long-term fellowship, yeah? And that's expanding, yeah? We just expand that with the MasterCard Foundation, and the first call got over 3,000 applicants for 40 fellowships. And that's people that get trained in advanced genomics, big data analysis, but if they see an outbreak, they will get reagents to respond for it, yeah? And then we decided to completely pivot, yeah? Now we have this arm of well-trained scientists, good facilities, and then we create a program in climate change and infectious disease that we call Climate, to move not only with genomics, but going from disease occurrence with disease intelligence, access to high data sets, human mobilities and satellites, climate data and vector, to really start understanding what is causing that epidemics, yeah? And that's what the vision starts with Start the Climate, which means Climate Amplified Disease and Epidemics, which is a global consortium to generate the knowledge, develop the tools and interventions to predict, track, and control diseases that epidemics that amplified for climate change, yeah? With the objective to prevent the spread and control epidemics. And what we are really excited that this is a program that's led by the Global South, both by us with multiple African partners and the Fiocruz Foundation, yeah? Why we want to do that? Why is important the intersection between climate change and infectious disease, yeah? So that's a very good review. It's not from our team, but really important to read that they identified what we call the climate hazards on the left, the way that this is amplified, for example, by vector-borne and the pathogens, yeah? And then what they have identified that's around 60% of the non-pathogens are being currently amplified by climate change. And so I will give you some very clear example how that's happened now. But what we did, this program is a really holistic program, and this program have been done really by our fellows, yeah? And that's the countries that they represent, and they have done dozens and dozens of outbreaks in the last 3 years. So I just try to highlight 3 for you. I'm gonna start with 2 of the priority pathogens of CEPI, yeah? The first one, it is chikungunya. Let me explain the history of chikungunya. So chikungunya is a virus that have been identified initially in Uganda in 1952, yeah? And caused sporadic outbreaks in Africa. By 2005, this virus gets some key mutations, yeah? Which allow to be transmitted by not only Aedes aegypti, but Aedes albopicus, and it go in a global program, yeah? It started outbreaks in Europe, but very large outbreaks in India and Asia. It's invaded the Caribbean, it's introduced in Brazil with multiple strains, and start cause very, very large outbreaks, yeah? So unfortunately, that happened again. As you speak, and just to ground you, yeah, that's a phylogenetic tree on the left, which show the 2005 strain, with add that mutation. It's a key mutation called the A226V that allow much better transmission by albopicus. A new, completely emergent happened now, and it happened very fast, yeah. Completely independent of the other one. It emerged with origin in West Central Africa in green, but then it entered the Indian Ocean Islands. It entered initially in the beginning of September in Reunion, yeah, and then caused this massive outbreak. Yeah, we are talking about thousands and thousands of infections in Reunion and multiple introductions to around the world, yeah. As that happened, yeah, it was quite clear that the next space that would start spreading would be Mauritius. So we work with the Mauritius Minister of Health to characterize that in real time. So this is data now from May 2025, June 2025, that could clearly show the introduction from Reunion, yeah, in August, with very small numbers, but then as it starts setting up in multiple regions of Mauritius, yeah, and causing a relatively large outbreak. But that's where now following that in real time and acting is very important. So what Mauritius did, yeah, is not only use this information in real time, and just to ground you, that's the epidemiological curve. We start sequencing the virus in April and May. And they use that information to understand how the virus is spreading in the island, but also to derive a lot of interventions, such as control of mosquito population, yeah, diagnostics, and prepare the hospital. And they end up really having a not very big outbreak, yeah. Very important work of Vanessa Ramut, yeah, a clinical scientist, was a fellow of us in the Mauritian Minister of Health, and Huria Tegali, our head of science, that live in Mauritians, just showing that if you can predict something that emerge and have the system, you can start derive the interventions very fast. But unfortunately, this strain of chikungunya, yeah, and another thing that happened in Mauritius come in the winter, which is good for controlling, yeah, it's begin to be introduced everywhere. And we have very reason to believe that this has potential for global spread. And not only that, but for biosecurity. Yeah? Chikungunya is one of the viruses that a lot of the global armies, for example, the US Army do a lot of research, because if an outbreak happens in a battalion, it can completely invalidate that, yeah? And that's quite problematic, and not only problematic, this new strain with this mutation have been introduced hundreds and hundreds of times to Europe, yeah? Especially Reunion part of France, and we have very reason to believe that's a special concern when somebody is starting in Europe, that go amplification cycle in Europe and potentially also to Asia, yeah? And potentially also invading the Caribbean also. So that is something that we have to be really careful, and that is something that's really worrying at the moment. But why do you need genomes? Why do you need that to go through in real time? So now I'm gonna just give you another example of another virus of pandemic potential, Rift Valley fever. Rift Valley fever is a virus that lives in the interepisodic cycle at normal, just in the environment, yeah, with normal rains. But if you have very heavy rains and floodings, which is getting very common, yeah, you have emergence of the infected mosquitoes that first will infect, livestock. And then start the first human case. When the viral load in the humans happen, it start getting a big epidemic cycle. A virus of pandemic potential, sometimes with a case fatality rate of up to 30%, yeah. So what we did, to prevent that, we work with a team at the ILRI, International Livestock Research Institute, and SAMBI at the University of the Western Cape, to first generating a new sequencing system to sequence all the samples in Africa, but also create a new lineage classification system, as we did for COVID or for Mpox, to just identify what would be the main strains that have pandemic potential. And we have identified this new lineage, what we call lineage C. We took these genomes, we feed these genomes to the AfriGen and to the mRNA hub, yeah, which then start working in a vaccine for that. Just to explain to you, Rift Valley is a negative stranded RNA virus genome, has 3 segments, yeah? And then what we are working is in the kind of the spike gene. Do not call the spike, it's called the GNGC. So with the sequence from the genome of C, of clade C, what they did is together and with collaborators to use artificial intelligence to start modifying the sequencer to get better immunogen and antigen presentations, yeah? So with that modified genome, they had a fully functional mRNA vaccine that with a spike, they took out the spike from COVID and they inserted that region, yeah? And then start being transcribed into DNAs, yeah? And then to start formulating mRNAs using ionized lipids, yeah? And that's what they did. So not only they did that, from genome to manipulation, you start getting into mRNA, but all the animal studies in Africa, for example, now infecting mouse and see the generating of anti-IgG, and then after that, taking some of the strains, generate a pseudovirus, and see what is the output on antibodies, all done in Africa. And very excited, yeah, with the International Vaccine Institute and now with CEPI that enter preclinical trial, yeah. To the best of our knowledge, the first vaccine completely designed with all the basic science entering clinical trial development in Africa. Just the power to go from genome when work together with research to take that to the market, yeah. Then just to finish, the third pathogen that I just gonna highlight to you is not a pathogen of the list of CEPI, but the one that's causing massive problem is dengue, yeah? So what we did with dengue is not only working the genome, but starting to predict and work with that. With a large team of data scientists, yeah, we calculate what you call the dengue transmission susceptibility index. When you take information from presence of mosquitoes, temperature, rain, satellite maps to try to understand their likely reasons, place that's gonna happen. You link that with some of the big data. We have access to all the data, the international travel data from IATA, and in partnership with Google Mobility, to understand when outbreaks happen, where they are likely to be introduced in Africa. And what became clear is that Africa can have two big waves of introductions, either from Asia or from South America, potentially also from Europe. But once it emerged, how that would move across the continent, yeah? We highlight some of these maps of disease susceptibilities, and then we work with multiple countries to respond to the outbreaks that's happening. And I must not stress how big is the outbreaks happen around the world. Last year, over 14 million diagnosed cases, which believe that's a tip of the iceberg. In Africa, we have working with many groups to describe large outbreaks in Ethiopia, in Senegal, Burkina Faso, Ivory Coast, Togo, Cameroon, Reunion, Mauritius, and some cases in Mozambique. And let's see the one that we really mix both data science, AI, to completely understand what would happen. And that's here. So that happened in Togo, yeah. So in Togo, just to ground you, here is the map of Togo on the left, yeah. The capital is in the south, Lomé, yeah. And then what we can do is to calculate the susceptibility index across different months and regions, yeah. And as you see, from January to March, April, May, June, July, start moving from the south to the north of the country. And that, unfortunately, what's happened. First case of introductions in the beginning of the year in the capital, and start growing, and then when come June, July, is exploding a very large outbreak that move from the capital all the way to the north of the country, yeah? And what we found there, what we found is not only a new lineage, but a new lineage, yeah, what is called A2 subclade, that a new lineage that has origin from East Africa. So with some recent, from large outbreaks that happened in Tanzania in 2019, yeah, this lineage seemed to be cryptically circulating around Africa, got introduction in West Africa and caused at least 5 introductions, causing a very large outbreak with really very fast rate of growth, yeah? And that has spread not only for Togo, but now to Ivory Coast and neighboring countries, yeah? But what makes us more excited than that is exactly the work that I show from the scientists in Mauritius, is that all this work was done by scientists from Togo, yeah, which come to our lab, yeah. They wanted to send the samples to be sequenced. I say, we do not just do sequencing, you have to come and you're gonna produce your own data. He produced all this data in 2 weeks, analyzed and reporting to the Minister of Health. Just in highlighted this big relationship with this big army of fellows everywhere now responding to outbreaks. And that's Dr. Isaka Maman from the National Institute of Hygiene of Lomé in Togo, yeah? So just to finish, I just want to play you the last 50 seconds of a video, yeah? Just to see how this partnership across multiple institutions, they go from genomics to data science, to now AI to vaccine design. So that's just one of our fellows that was funded by Google DeepMind, yeah, and that was highlighted as one of the big young scientists coming from AI in Africa. I don't know if you can get volume, yeah? Let's just try again. Okay, seems that the video does not want to play. Let's try. It's only okay, but it is just to highlighting the really work that is doing, and that it is
AI is becoming better at identifying diseases and showing us how climate change impacts the spread of dengue virus, specifically in the West Africa.
CDC, WHO vaccine program to try to really change that. So we really believe that we played a key role. This I'm talking about the continent on global response to multiple epidemics such as HIV, Mpox, and COVID. As the pandemic recedes, we also see this big problem of climate change and infectious disease. We create a big program that we really cross-border collaboration, to really bring that, to build on what is a very famous Africa proverb. Not the one, if you want to go far, you go together, but another one that's very important. A stick is easily broken, but sticks in bundle are unbreakable. And that's what we are trying to do. We also believe, despite the discussion here, that we have to Africa have to use the leapfrog technologies, such as in mRNA production and AI and data science, and we have to embrace that to stay ahead of the fields. So thank you very much. We have multiple funders. It's more than ever. It's really important to be not dependent on one funder. We are very grateful for all the funders and here for the EDCTP to invite us. And we also invest a lot in science communication to make sure that the results get there, especially for the fellows, so you can get a lot of more information there. Thank you.
Wow, what a fantastic keynote. A big hand again for Prof. Tulio.